A man in his early 30s stands in the shadow of a marble pillar, breathing in the thick smell of temple incense and weaponized to condemn anyone who happens to build a successful business. Money is the root of all evil. You tell yourself it is for their protection. You tell yourself it is just a season. But silver cannot love you back. It cannot comfort you. It cannot sit with you in the dark. Yet the Philarguria promises that it can. It whispers. It guarantees a future that it does not actually have the power to deliver. It tells you that if you just acquire a little more, the anxiety will finally stop. You tighten your grip until your knuckles turn white. But the anxiety does not stop. The root just grows deeper. A romance with a lifeless object is incredibly dangerous because it always demands a sacrifice. When Paul describes what this affection actually does to the human being who holds it, he does not use a financial metaphor. He uses a violent, physical image. He uses a word that only appears exactly one time in the entire New Testament. Look at the heavy steel door of a modern bank vault. You can see the thick titanium bolts, the cold concrete casing, the glowing red laser of a biometric scanner reading the ridges of a human thumb. We construct these massive, impenetrable fortresses to protect the very thing we believe is going to protect us. Why does the affection for silver, this Philarguria, produce such a wide canopy? We use it to explain corporate greed. We use it to explain political corruption. We nod our heads when a billionaire does something unethical, of destruction across human history. It is not because humans are naturally drawn to malice or actively looking for ways to sabotage their own communities. It is because humans are profoundly, universally terrified of vulnerability. We operate in a world defined by unpredictable collapse, where the ground underneath our feet constantly threatens to give way. Markets crash, industries pivot, health falters, and empires quietly fracture in the dark. The human mind is desperate to find a fortress against that chaos. The obsession with the vault is not a pursuit of luxury. It is a pursuit of immunity. When an individual begins to trust their wealth, they are attempting to purchase an exemption from the tragic fragility of the human condition. They look at a massive accumulation of resources and experience a literal, physical release of tension in their shoulders. The silver whispers a highly convincing lie, suggesting that if the wall of currency is built high enough, the suffering of the world will not be able to climb over it. This is exactly why Paul tells Timothy that this affection is a root of all kinds of evil. When you believe that your physical survival and emotional security depend entirely on the numbers in a ledger, the people around you slowly cease to be human beings. They become calculations. And we whisper it like an ancient proverb. And on the surface, it seems to make perfect sense. A nation goes to war over resources, become liabilities. They become stepping stones to higher ground. A business partner is quietly betrayed because the margin of safety required an extra percentage. A family is abandoned because the defensive wall of the fortress needed more bricks. The darkest actions in human history rarely begin with a desire to cause pain. They begin with a desperate, grasping desire to avoid it. So the root continues to pull nutrients from the soil. The person rationalizes every moral shortcut, genuinely believing they are simply securing a safe perimeter for their life. But the safety is a phantom. The fortress is made of paper. Paul understands the catastrophic irony of this strategy. He knows that the people who fall in love with their silver do not actually find the insulation they are desperately looking to sit by. They find the exact opposite. When Paul finally describes the ultimate consequence of this misplaced affection at the end of the sentence, he does not use a financial metaphor about going bankrupt. He does not talk about an empty vault, a stolen purse, or a bad investment. He describes a physical mutilation. He reaches for a specific, violent Greek verb that appears nowhere else in the biblical text, and he forces Timothy to look at the sharp edge of a blade. A family fractures over an inheritance. A friendship dissolves over an unpaid debt. The math appears to add up perfectly. A Roman auxiliary stands in the dust of the Ephesian marketplace. He grips the leather handle of a short sword. He tests the iron edge against his thumb. A drop of red blood beads on his skin. A blade is designed to penetrate armor. It is designed to slide through muscle. It is designed to stop breath. But a soldier does not turn the iron upon himself. He points it outward. He understands the mechanics of violence. Yet when Paul describes the final, catastrophic end of the Philurguria, the romance with silver, he describes an act of unthinkable self-violence. For the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil. Some people, eager for money, have wandered from the faith and pierced themselves with many griefs. Look at the Greek verb behind that phrase, peripero. It appears exactly one time in the entire New Testament. It is not a banking term. It is a slaughterhouse term. Peri means completely, all the way around. Pero means to pierce. In the ancient world, it was the specific word used for taking a raw cut of meat and driving a heavy, iron spit completely through the center of it before holding it over a fire. It is a brutal word. It is a terminal word. It leaves a gaping hole. But the most terrifying part of the verse is not the violence. It is the grammar. Who is holding the spit? Most people assume this famous phrase is a warning about economics. They assume the text is teaching that poverty is holy. God is not punishing the merchant. The silver is not attacking the vault owner. The money is completely passive. The damage is not an external attack. It is a self-inflicted wound. They wandered. They pierced themselves. They chased the phantom safety. They built the fortress. They grabbed the cold metal of the coin. And in doing so, they drove the cold metal of the spit through their own chests. Paul adds that they pierced themselves with many griefs. The Greek noun is odunais. It does not mean a slight disappointment. It means a consuming, overwhelming agony. It is the word used elsewhere for the pain of physical torture. It is the word used for the suffocating grief of a parent losing a child. And Paul says the lover of silver takes these consuming agonies and voluntarily drives them through their own soul. They sacrifice a marriage for a promotion. They drive the spit. They betray a lifelong friend for a percentage. They drive the spit. They abandon their physical health for a ledger. They drive the spit. They do it to themselves. They build their own torture device out of the very materials they thought would keep them safe. But if the damage is this catastrophic, if the iron spit shatters the bone and leaves a bleeding hole in the life of the person holding it, you have to ask a logical question. Why do they keep driving the blade deeper? That currency is inherently corrupt, and that God wants his people to feel guilty about possessing it. But if you look closer, why does a human being keep driving the iron spit deeper when they can clearly feel the damage it is causing? You can watch a highly successful executive sitting in a corner office with floor-to-ceiling glass windows, looking down at the concrete grid of a city. The air conditioning hums. The leather chair is flawless, and the person sitting in it is entirely hollowed out, carrying a fractured marriage and a stress-induced ulcer. They feel the griefs. They feel the odunais Paul wrote about. They feel the dull, persistent ache of a life spent serving an altar that never says enough. But instead of pulling the spit out of their chest, they grip the handle and turn it again. They chase another acquisition. They launch another hostile takeover. They do this because the silver does not just cause the wound, it also medicates it. Wealth is not a cure for the human condition. It is a highly effective anesthetic. When the crushing weight of loneliness or anxiety hits, a person with profound resources does not have to sit in an empty, quiet room and actually process the grief. They can buy a plane ticket. They can book a suite overlooking a turquoise ocean. They can surround themselves with the clatter of expensive restaurants and the fleeting dopamine of purchasing something brand new. You can feel the heavy silk of a tailored suit, but it does not stop your hands from shaking. The money acts like a chemical numbing agent. At the original Greek grammar, at the precise vocabulary Paul chose to send into that banking city, you start to see something the standard reading completely misses, temporarily deadening the nerve endings, so the person cannot feel the iron spike buried in their chest. The brain is tricked into thinking the root has stopped growing, but the anesthetic always wears off. And when it does, the pain returns. demanding a much higher dosage. The tragedy of the Philaguria, the romance with currency, is the delusion that more silver will eventually solve the exact problem the silver created. You see people trapped in this cycle, running frantically on a treadmill of acquisition, utterly convinced that the next comma in the bank account will finally be the one that buys their lasting peace. The silver does not stop the bleeding. It only buys a quiet room to bleed in. Paul is writing this warning to Timothy not to condemn the rich, but to save them. He is standing in the middle of the Ephesian economy, watching thousands of people drag their wealth into the temple of Artemis, locking it behind heavy stone doors, and walking away utterly impoverished in their souls. He is watching them trade the quiet, steady presence of a living God for the loud, demanding anxiety of an idol that cannot breathe. He wants Timothy to offer them a different way to live. He wants to show them how to pull the heavy iron out of their own chests, drop the cold metal on the floor, and walk away. And to see how that actually happens, you have to look at the entire picture. This verse is not a statement about economics. It is the diagnosis of an invisible disease. The real question of this passage isn't, "Are you too rich?" A culture drops 3 words from a sentence and transforms a profound diagnosis into a cheap proverb. A riot breaks out over silver idols and reveals a city that measures human worth by the vault. A root creeps silently through the dark dirt and slowly hollows out the ground beneath a life. A human being falls in love with cold metal and trades the presence of God for a phantom safety. A fortress is built to keep the chaos out and ends up locking the anxiety inside. A heavy iron spit is driven completely through a chest, and the hands holding the blade belong to the victim. A fortune is spent to numb the gaping wound, and the bleeding continues quietly in the dark. Same root, same phantom safety. One devastating romance. But maybe the part that stays with me most is the iron spit. Periperu. The realization that the damage is not an external attack. The silver does not rise up and strike us. The vault does not declare war. We do it to ourselves. We grab the heavy metal, utterly terrified of the unpredictable future, and we voluntarily drive the blade through our own peace, our own families, our own souls. It's this. What is the silver doing to your chest? Paul was not offering Timothy a financial philosophy. He was diagnosing something universal. If you are in a season where you are exhausted from constantly calculating your own security, where the numbers in the ledger are dictating the rhythm of your heart, 1 Timothy chapter 6 is a place to stop. The answer is not a larger vault. It is a different love. You do not have to hold the iron anymore. You are allowed to take your hands off the handle. You are allowed to step away from the altar. That never stops demanding a sacrifice. If this reached something in you, subscribe. Leave a comment. Even one word helps. Share this with someone who is exhausted by the crushing pressure to build their own fortress. Pray for us as we keep digging into these ancient texts. And may the God who actually holds tomorrow release your grip on the metal today and give you the quiet, unshakable peace that silver can never buy. He was naming a condition that slowly untethers a human being from reality. A quiet infection that most people do not even realize they have caught. And the sharp, metallic tang of melting silver. The structure looming over him is the Temple of Artemis. But it is not just a religious shrine, until their lives are fracturing apart. To feel the weight of what Paul is actually saying, you have to start with the single most misquoted noun in the English language. Because the verse you have heard your entire life, it doesn't actually say what you think it says. Listen to the way we quote it. We say it in boardrooms. We type it in comment sections. We spray paint it on brick walls. We use it as a weapon against anyone who possesses more than we do. Money is the root of all evil. It sounds authoritative. It sounds definitive. It sounds biblical. It is also completely false. Hold a physical dollar bill in your hand. Feel the textured paper against your skin. Look at the sharp green ink. That physical object is completely inert. It has no moral compass. It has no pulse. It cannot plot. It cannot scheme. It cannot destroy a family. It cannot wage a war. It builds the hospital. It builds the warhead. It funds the orphanage. It funds the cartel. It buys the bread. It buys the bribe. The object is not the enemy. It is the mirror. The actual text of 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 10, is fundamentally different than the cultural proverb. The culture dropped 3 crucial words from the beginning of the sentence. The love of money. That addition shifts the entire universe of the passage. It is the central bank of Asia Minor. Deep inside its walls, past the chanting priests and the sacrificial altars, sit impenetrable stone vaults. It moves the problem from the vault to the chest. It changes the target from the currency to the human heart. Poverty does not guarantee purity. Wealth does not guarantee wickedness. A man can sleep on a freezing concrete street, holding an empty paper cup in his hands, and possess a soul absolutely devoured by greed. A woman can control a massive financial empire, walking across polished marble floors, and hold every single penny with completely open hands. The math in the bank account tells you absolutely nothing about the health of the soul. But the cultural misquote misses something else, something even more subtle. The famous older English translations say it is the root of all evil, but the Greek text is much more precise. It says, "The love of money is a root of all kinds of evil." There are dark things in this world that have nothing to do with silver. Pride does not require a bank account. Arrogance does not require a paycheck. Money did not invent human brokenness, but it does do something unique to human brokenness. It waters it. It feeds it. It gives it the leverage to grow into something monstrous. Yet even if we correct the quote, even if we add the love of back into the sentence, we are still missing the true weight of what Paul is writing. Because the English word love is entirely too weak, holding the wealth of kings, merchants, and empires. The noise of the surrounding marketplace is deafening. Traders shout in a dozen languages. It sounds like a simple preference. It sounds like enjoying a good meal or wanting a comfortable house. But the specific Greek word Paul chose is not about preference. And to understand exactly what he meant, you have to look at the shadows of the specific city he sent this letter to. The Mediterranean sun beats down on the blinding white marble of the Curetas Street in Ephesus. A local craftsman wipes sweat from his forehead, his hammer striking a tiny anvil as he shapes a miniature silver shrine. The heat of the forge burns his skin, and the air smells of molten metal and wood smoke. But the sharp, rhythmic ping of his hammer is the actual heartbeat of the city. The Temple of Artemis dominates the skyline just outside the city walls. It is an architectural leviathan, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, boasting over 100 massive columns rising 60 feet into the air. But its true power is not architectural, it is financial. The Temple of Artemis is not just a religious sanctuary. It is the Wall Street of antiquity, because temples are considered sacred and protected from theft by the fear of the gods. They are the safest places on earth to store wealth. Kings from across the known world deposit their gold reserves in the vaults beneath the temple floor. Powerful merchants secure their global trade lines. Heavy coins clink against wooden tables, and the air hums with the anxious energy of a society frantically trying to secure its own future by paying exorbitant fees to the Ephesian priests. The city thrives on a constant, aggressive influx of capital. Years earlier, when Paul first preached in this city, he did not face a theological debate. He faced an economic riot. A silversmith named Demetrius realized that if people stopped worshiping Artemis, the market for silver idols would crash. He gathered the trade guilds, and they dragged Paul's companions into the massive open-air theater, screaming for 2 straight hours. They did not riot over a difference of opinion. They rioted over their profit margins. They gathered as a mob and shouted until their throats bled because their financial security was threatened. This is the atmosphere Timothy is walking through every single day. He is trying to shepherd a fragile group of early Christians right in the shadow of this massive financial machine. The believers are a tiny minority trying to survive in an economy that measures human value exclusively by the weight of a coin purse. They walk past the silver markets. They see the wealthy elite draped in fine purple linen and heavy gold chains. They feel the crushing, daily cultural pressure of a society that loudly declares that safety is found only in the vault. Ephesus is a city obsessed with currency. It is a city that measures human worth by the weight of a coin purse. The air they breathe is thick with the anxiety of acquisition. Paul knows the gravitational pull of that culture. He knows that the Ephesian believers are tempted to look at the massive temple vaults, look at their own meager possessions, and feel completely unprotected. So when he writes a letter back into this city, he does not use a generic word for greed. He does not use a common philosophical term for basic desire. He targets the exact mechanism of the Ephesian obsession. He reaches into the Greek language and uses a highly specific compound word that completely changes how we should read this famous verse. And the detail that changes everything is hidden right inside the syllables of that word. We treat the word root as a generic metaphor. We use it like a synonym for a starting point, a basic foundation, or a simple cause. When Paul dictates 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 10, he uses imagery that would make perfect sense to anyone walking the agricultural terraces of the ancient world. For the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil. The word translated as root here is the Greek noun rhiza. It appears over 30 times in the New Testament, and it is almost never used to describe something passive. In the botanical reality of the first century, and standing in the middle of this financial epicenter, this young leader, named Timothy, unrolls a parchment sent by his mentor. Paul, a rhiza is an active, subterranean engine. It is the unseen, creeping network that anchors a tree to the earth. Its entire biological purpose is to aggressively pull moisture and minerals out of the dirt to feed the branches towering above it. It operates entirely in the dark. You do not see the root working. You only see what it produces above the surface. If something about this linguistic precision is stirring up questions you've never considered, you're exactly who this channel is for. Drop a thought in the comments and hit subscribe. Because every week, we go deeper into the text than you knew was possible. So, the root continues to feed in the dark. A person does not wake up one morning and suddenly decide to destroy their family over an inheritance. A leader does not suddenly decide to compromise their integrity for a slightly higher profit margin. The process is infinitely slower, completely silent, and hidden from public view. The rhiza creeps through the soil of the mind, millimeter by millimeter, wrapping around decisions and extracting justifications. It is the exact same word the author of Hebrews uses when warning the early church about a rhiza of bitterness, a root that springs up and poisons the community. It is the word John the Baptist shouts in the wilderness when he warns. Near the end of the letter, Paul writes a single sentence about what this wealth does to the human soul. You know the sentence, that the heavy iron axe is already laid to the rhiza of the trees. It is a hungry, relentless mechanism. The love of money is not a static character flaw. It is a living root system. Once it takes hold in the soil of a human chest, it begins to draw nutrients. It pulls time. It pulls focus. It pulls small, seemingly harmless ethical compromises. It feeds a massive, heavy canopy of outward success while quietly hollowing out the ground underneath the person standing there. But what exactly is this root searching for? To understand the specific infection Paul is warning his young protege about, you have to look at the other half of the phrase. Because the word we translate as money is not actually about currency at all. You wake up at 2 in the morning. The house is completely quiet. You reach for your phone on the nightstand. The cold glass taps against your fingers. The blue light from the screen hits your face in the dark. You open an app. You stare at a number. You feel a tight, physical knot form in the center of your chest. You are not looking at physical silver. You are looking at glowing pixels. But your biological reaction is exactly the same as a first-century merchant checking his vault. Even people who have never touched a Bible know the sentence. It is thrown around in movies, printed on bumper stickers. You are experiencing the exact symptom Paul is warning Timothy about. When Paul writes this sentence, he does not use the standard Greek word for wealth. He does not use plaudos, the common noun for riches. He uses a highly specific, deeply emotional compound word, philagoria. Break it apart. Philos is the Greek word for brotherly love. It is deep affection. It is intimate friendship. It is the feeling of sitting across a wooden table from someone you trust with your life. And argyros is the Greek word for silver. Affection for silver. Friendship with silver. A deep, emotional bond with a heavy, cold metal. The love of money is not an economic strategy. It is a romance. Paul is diagnosing a misplaced intimacy. You take the sacred, quiet trust that belongs to a living God, and you transfer it to a dead object. You begin to trust it. You begin to consult it before you consult anyone else. You begin to find your identity in how much of it you hold. You look at the metal. You look at the paper. You look at the pixels. You feel safe. You feel insulated. You feel protected from the terrifying unpredictability of tomorrow. You work the extra shift. You miss the family dinner. You skip the Sabbath rest. You justify the absence.